Jenna Quinn is a child abuse prevention advocate, speaker, and author. She helped implement Jenna's Law, which requires sex abuse education in Texas. Today, similar legislation has been mandated in over half of America's schools. And while she knows all the statistics about child sex abuse, her fight against this epidemic comes from her own personal experience. Jenna was 13 when her best friend's father sexually assaulted her for the first time. Intense shame, fear, and withdrawal followed. Then, after 3 years of suffering in silence, she finally broke free from the abuse and brought her tormentor to justice. In her book, Pure in Heart, Jenna shares her journey through sexual assault, from fear to forgiveness. She gives warning signs to look for and offers hope to survivors.
Well, joining me now is Jenna Quinn. Jenna, great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
You know, most people hear the statistic 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 6 boys are going to experience this in their lifetime, but most of us, it's so, I guess it's such anathema to us that we think, not my child, not my grandchildren. How did this begin for you?
So this really began, and my story is not an uncommon story. Over 90% of the time, a child is sexually abused by someone that they know. But it's not just someone that they know, it's also someone that they trust. And so perpetrators use this relationship as a deposit for the child's silence. It's much easier to tell on a stranger than it is a family member or a friend.
You say that you were groomed by the person that did this to you. What do you mean by that? How did he do that?
So children are groomed and families are groomed as well. And so, you know, he groomed my family to trust him in my, you know, in
establishing
in the care.
Relationship with them. And
yes, establishing relationship. And oftentimes these perpetrators, they will groom. They look for isolated one-on-one situations where they can, you know, be with these children alone.
Once this happened to you, how did it affect you? How did it change your personality, change the way you thought and felt?
So we do know that the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And what I experienced is that with this crime, all 3 are accomplished in one moment. Because innocence is stolen and your spirit is crushed. I felt part of my spirit was killed. And then it destroyed my relationship with myself, the way I viewed myself, the way my relationship with God, and especially my relationships with other people.
Yeah, just a trust factor alone would be broken. In your situation, this was a very close family friend. Actually, his family and your family were very close. How could it have been different? I mean, how... You know, when someone is approaching a child like that, let me start even before you ask that with, how did he get you not to tell? Because that's the first thing people think. They think, well, if someone's doing something wrong and it makes you feel bad, that every child's going to go tell, but 2/3 of them don't.
It is, that's right. 2/3 will not. And this is largely the most underreported crime that we see. And you know, many times there are threats, and that 90% factor really plays into why children don't tell. Oftentimes they are threatened. I was threatened. And when you're a child and an adult threatens you, especially if you feel like you did something wrong, you did something to bring that on, which is what I thought, the child will not say anything. And then there's also consequences for loved ones. You know, there's the primary child that's been offended, but then there are secondary victims as well. The perpetrators have families of their own oftentimes. And my parents, the betrayal, you know, kids don't want to disappoint their parents.
Well, and there's a shame factor involved too. Were you afraid ever that you wouldn't be believed if you told people?
I did fear that, and many children fear, you know, not this guy. This person would never do something like that. And that's what we hear all the time with this type of crime. I mean, these perpetrators are likable people. They know how to groom. They're very strategic, and when they
even in the way he talked to you about what we are doing and our problem sort of brings you into it as though somehow you have fault in the whole process. For a child to work through all of that is almost impossible. What were some of the ways that you exhibited that something was wrong?
So, you know, the emotional component was there, but behaviorally, I changed in almost every way possible. You know, I went from being outgoing and social to withdrawn, depressed. I had insomnia and night terrors, awful night terrors. I would wake up in the middle of the night, you know, halfway down the stair landing with my hand on the rail and my heart's beating out of my chest. And I would wake up that way and I didn't know how I got there. So these night terrors would come upon me, and the depression and the suicide, because children feel there's no way out. And when you're a child, especially when you're a teenager, kids can't wait. You know, they can't wait for freedom.
So I have two questions for you. What would you say to someone who might be watching us right now who was abused as a child or even is being abused but hasn't told anyone yet?
I would say it's so important for you to tell, but don't just tell anyone. Tell someone who is going to help you. You know, silence and shame are the enemy's weapon of choice with this crime. The American Medical Association has said that this is a silent epidemic because it is truly the silence that kills. You know, Psalms 32:3, David said, "When I was silent, my bones wasted away." So start that process.
And for parents, they need to talk to their kids about this.
They do. Absolutely talk to your parents. You know, talk to your kids about this, because my parents didn't know what the signs were. They didn't know what to look for.
Right.
And so education, you know, 95% of this crime is preventable through education.
Want you to know, if you or someone you know needs help, you can call the Child Abuse Hotline. It's toll free. It's 1-800-4-A-CHILD. And if you want to know more about Jenna's story, because there's lots of wisdom in her book as well, it's called Pure in Heart. It's available nationwide. You know, we need to get on top of this and change that statistic. It's far too great. Thank you for what you do, for being with us today, and for sharing your story.